Most people think wealth announces itself. A louder car, a larger house, a watch designed to be recognized from across a room, a social media feed carefully engineered to suggest that its owner has already conquered the world. But history tells a darker story. The people who accumulate durable power rarely look as powerful as they actually are. They build quietly. They negotiate quietly. They acquire quietly. They wait while everyone else performs. And when the world finally notices what they have built, the decisive battle is usually already over. Cinematic slow-motion shot of an antique brass key turning inside an enormous iron vault beneath a Renaissance palace, candlelight flickering across stone walls. Niccolo Machiavelli understood something about power that modern conversations about wealth routinely miss. He did not study power as an abstract virtue. He studied what people actually did when survival, ambition, fear, money, loyalty, and control collided. In his world, a ruler could lose everything without losing a single battle. A merchant could become powerful without wearing a crown. A family could dominate a city for generations without openly declaring conquest. And an apparently insignificant decision made 10 years earlier could suddenly become the difference between sovereignty and dependence. That is the first paradox of wealth. The visible result is usually created by invisible decisions. The fortune is visible. The discipline that created it is not. The property is visible. The years spent refusing unnecessary consumption are not. The investment portfolio is visible. The opportunities rejected to protect capital are not. The influence is visible. The alliances, favors, patience, and strategic silence behind it are almost impossible to see. And this is precisely where the modern individual is vulnerable. You are surrounded by people trained to display consumption before they have accumulated ownership. They are encouraged to look successful before becoming economically sovereign. They are taught to chase income while ignoring leverage. They are taught to seek attention while neglecting optionality. They are taught that appearing wealthy is psychologically satisfying, even when the appearance itself creates financial dependence. That is the optical illusion. A person can look rich while being completely controlled by his obligations. Another can look ordinary while possessing assets, relationships, knowledge, and liquidity that give him extraordinary freedom. The first has a facade. The second has power. Dark silhouette of a wealthy merchant standing alone behind a balcony, while a crowded Renaissance marketplace moves beneath him. Machiavelli's Italy was not a peaceful laboratory of political theory. It was a fractured landscape of competing city-states, mercenary armies, banking families, shifting alliances, betrayals, diplomacy, and sudden reversals. Florence could rise, Venice could maneuver, Milan could threaten, Rome could influence, and a family that appeared untouchable in one decade could find itself exiled in the next. The lesson was brutal. Power that depends entirely on appearances is fragile. Power that depends on structure is durable. This distinction matters enormously when thinking about money, because most people attempt to become richer by asking a superficial question. How can I make more? The strategist asks a different question. What structure would make my wealth increasingly difficult to take away? That single change in perspective transforms the game. Income is a stream. Ownership is a position. Savings are stored time. Leverage is amplified capacity. Reputation is social capital. Knowledge is informational asymmetry. Networks are distributed influence. And liquidity is freedom. The objective is not simply to possess more money. The objective is to become less dependent on circumstances controlled by other people. That is what financial sovereignty actually means. Close cinematic shot of ancient coins scattered across a military map, with one black chess piece standing upright at the center. History repeatedly demonstrates this principle. Consider the rise of powerful banking families in Renaissance Europe. They did not become influential merely because coins existed in their vaults. Their real advantage came from understanding movement. Money moved between cities. Governments needed financing. Merchants needed credit. Wars required enormous resources. Political relationships determined who received contracts. Information traveled slowly. And the person who understood where capital was moving could position himself before everyone else understood what was happening. That is asymmetry. The ordinary participant sees the transaction. The strategist sees the system producing the transaction. The ordinary person asks what something costs. The strategist asks who controls the supply. The ordinary person asks how much a job pays. The strategist asks who owns the mechanism producing the income. The ordinary person watches the market. The strategist watches incentives. And this is where the first great mistake begins. People confuse effort with value. They assume that working harder automatically produces wealth. But history has never operated according to such a comforting rule. A farmer can work from sunrise to darkness and remain poor. A merchant can organize 10 people and become wealthy. A ruler can make one decision and redirect the resources of an entire region. The difference is not always effort. It is position. Position determines leverage. Leverage determines how much consequence one decision can produce. Ancient Roman-style balance scale slowly tilting from a pile of coins toward a single engraved seal of authority. Imagine two men. The first earns $10,000 a month, but spends nearly all of it maintaining the appearance associated with that income. The second earns less, but consistently converts part of his income into assets, skills, relationships, and productive ownership. For several years, the first appears superior. He drives the better car. He takes the better vacations. He receives more admiration. The second may appear almost invisible. Then something changes. The economy weakens. The first man's income disappears. His lifestyle remains. His obligations remain. His debt remains. His social expectations remain. The second man's income also suffers, but his dependence has already been reduced. He has liquidity. He has assets. He has skills. He has relationships. He has room to maneuver. The optical illusion collapses, and suddenly the supposedly less successful man possesses something much more valuable than status: choice. That is why silent wealth is so dangerous to misunderstand. It is not about hiding money for the sake of hiding money. It is about refusing to let other people's expectations dictate your financial architecture. The sovereign does not need everyone to know what he owns. He needs to know exactly what he controls. This is where Machiavellian thinking becomes useful, not because every financial decision should become an act of manipulation, but because power requires an understanding of incentives. People reveal what they value through behavior. Institutions reveal their priorities through where capital flows. Markets reveal fear through price. Companies reveal weakness through dependence. And individuals reveal financial fragility through the obligations they cannot escape. The strategist learns to observe these signals without becoming emotionally attached to them. That emotional distance is rare, and rarity creates advantage. What history forgets to tell you about many great fortunes is that accumulation was often less dramatic than the mythology suggests. There was no single magical breakthrough. There were repeated decisions that looked insignificant in isolation: a purchase rejected, a debt avoided, a skill developed, a relationship preserved. A profitable opportunity declined because the downside was asymmetric. A period of silence while competitors overextended themselves. A willingness to remain underestimated. Cinematic shot of a lone figure in a dark library closing a ledger while distant city lights shimmer through tall windows. This is the silent siege. You do not attack the mountain. You reduce your dependence on everything beneath it. You do not need to defeat every competitor. You need to build a position from which their decisions matter less to you. You do not need to prove that you are winning. You need to make your position increasingly difficult to reverse. That is cold calculus. And it begins with understanding one uncomfortable truth. Most people are not poor because they lack opportunities. They are poor because every new opportunity is immediately consumed by an old obligation. More income produces a larger lifestyle. A larger lifestyle produces larger expenses. Larger expenses produce greater dependence. Greater dependence forces continued labor. Continued labor leaves less time to develop ownership, and the cycle continues. It looks like progress, but structurally it is captivity. The solution is not necessarily to reject ambition. It is to redirect ambition. Instead of asking, how can I afford more? Ask, how can I need less? Instead of asking, how can I impress them? Ask, how can I become independent of their approval? Instead of asking, how can I increase my salary? Ask, how can I increase the percentage of my life controlled by assets, skills, and decisions that belong to me? This is where the distinction between income and wealth becomes decisive. Income tells you how much power enters your hands. Wealth tells you how much power remains after the world has taken its share. Dark cinematic visualization of coins flowing through a series of gates, with only a fraction reaching a fortified inner chamber. And once you understand that distinction, another principle emerges. Never allow your lifestyle to rise faster than your strategic position, because every luxury purchased too early can become a silent master. Every recurring obligation can become a chain. Every unnecessary status symbol can become a demand for future income. The modern world has perfected this mechanism. It does not need to imprison you physically. It only needs to convince you that you must maintain a particular standard of living. Then your own possessions begin enforcing obedience. The car requires payments. The house requires maintenance. The image requires constant spending. The social circle requires participation. The lifestyle requires income. And income requires compliance. That is a remarkably sophisticated form of control. The most dangerous chains are the ones people defend as achievements. Machiavelli would have recognized the pattern immediately. A ruler who cannot act because he fears losing popularity is not sovereign. A merchant who cannot negotiate because he desperately needs the next deal is not sovereign. And a person who cannot say no because his lifestyle depends upon saying yes is not financially sovereign either. The objective, therefore, is not simply accumulation. It is optionality, the ability to wait, the ability to refuse, the ability to negotiate, the ability to survive a temporary loss, the ability to move when others are trapped, the ability to recognize an opportunity without needing it to save you. That final condition is particularly powerful. Desperation destroys bargaining power. Patience creates it. Cinematic shot of an old wooden chessboard in an empty war room. One player seated in darkness while the opponent's pieces slowly disappear. This is why the richest strategic position is often not the largest one. It is the least desperate one. The person who needs the deal has less power than the person who can walk away. The person who needs the applause has less freedom than the person who can remain misunderstood. The person who needs immediate profit has less leverage than the person capable of waiting for superior terms. And the person whose entire financial life depends upon one source of income is vulnerable even if that income appears impressive. This is the paradox of silent wealth. The strongest position may look like restraint. While everyone else is expanding the facade, you are strengthening the foundation. While they chase visibility, you accumulate capability. While they chase consumption, you accumulate ownership. While they compete for attention, you cultivate asymmetry. And while they announce every victory, you allow your results to remain invisible. Because the moment everyone understands exactly what you are doing, your advantage may begin to disappear. The strategist therefore protects information, not through paranoia, through discipline. There are things the world does not need to know: how much you have, what you are planning, which opportunity you are pursuing, which assets you are accumulating, which skills you are developing, which relationships may eventually become valuable. Silence is not weakness. Sometimes silence is information control, and information control is power. Close-up of a sealed black envelope resting beside an antique signet ring on a mahogany desk, candle flame reflected in polished metal. History is full of people who revealed their intentions too early. They celebrated before victory. They announced expansion before securing supply. They displayed wealth before securing liquidity. They revealed ambition before building capacity. Then competitors adjusted, enemies prepared, opportunists arrived, and the advantage vanished. The fatal mistake was not losing the battle. It was revealing the intention before the position was strong enough to survive resistance. That lesson belongs far beyond politics. It belongs to anyone trying to build wealth in a world where attention is monetized and everything is encouraged to become public. You do not need to document every move. You do not need to prove your progress. You do not need to make your financial strategy entertaining. Build first, explain later, if explanation is even necessary. And once you adopt that mindset, wealth stops being a performance. It becomes infrastructure. The question is no longer whether people think you are successful. The question becomes whether your position becomes stronger while they are looking somewhere else. That is where the real Machiavellian lesson begins. Because accumulating wealth silently is not merely about saving more money. It is about constructing a system in which your future self possesses greater freedom than your present self. And systems require something most ambitious people hate: patience. Not passive patience, strategic patience. The patience to let compounding work. The patience to acquire knowledge before acting. The patience to let weak competitors overextend. The patience to build relationships before needing them. The patience to become dangerous before announcing that you are ambitious. And above all, the patience to understand that the greatest victories often look boring while they are being created. Nighttime cinematic shot of an ancient fortress being constructed stone by stone under moonlight, with no soldiers visible. That is the historical catalyst. Power does not always arrive with a trumpet. Sometimes it arrives disguised as discipline. Sometimes it looks like an ordinary person refusing an ordinary temptation for the 1,000th time. Sometimes it looks like a quiet bank account, a private skill, a carefully chosen relationship, a business nobody understands yet, a position accumulated while everyone else is distracted. And then years later the invisible structure becomes visible. The fortress is standing. The gates are reinforced. The treasury is full. The dependencies have been reduced. And the person who built it no longer needs permission to move. That is the moment wealth becomes sovereignty. And that is precisely where the deeper game begins.